Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. How is everybody doing? I hope everyone's had their morning coffee. We're back again on another day of jam-packed session. Again, my name is Maria Monique, and I'm a B2B marketing specialist and the host of the Rising Boss podcast. And I will be your session host for all topics under the Powerful Brands track. Now, I hope everyone learned a lot from yesterday's sessions because I did. It's been such a very insightful day of presentations. Now, today, as we have the last day of the conference, we hope to bring you another round of exciting topics. Now, before we start, we encourage your active participation today as our knowledge partner Manning is offering 5 lucky attendees the chance to win the ebook Demand Forecasting Best Practices, which will be given to those of you who are very active on the chat, rating sessions, and leaving comments. So please feel free to interact with us. Send questions over to the chat box, and I'll be happy to share them over with our speaker. Now, speaking of our speaker for today is Silvi Nunez. She is an English to Spanish translator specializing in multilingual SEO and the co-founder of Optimational, a localization agency that helps companies who are looking to expand into new markets. So in terms of her presentation, what can we expect? Are you looking for ways to increase your company's ROI and expand its organic reach? Is generating new leads or improving customer experience a priority for your company? In Sylvie's presentation, she will go over the steps that companies should follow to successfully localize their websites and optimize them with SEO, with the general goal to have a well-positioned multilingual website to offer services in new markets or to new audiences. Now, without any further ado, Sylvie, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you so much for that introduction, Maria. I will go ahead and share screen now. Okay, and I hope I don't repeat myself because that introduction was quite complete. So, hello to everyone on the other side of the screen. As Maria mentioned, today I will be sharing with you insights about how to localize a website to increase its organic reach. Now, before we start today's presentation, let me ask you something. Have you ever done a search on Google, opened a website, saw it was in a different language, and then immediately closed it? I know I have. I have done it so many times. Here's a fact. 9 international internet users out of 10 will ignore a product if it's not in their local language. People prefer to buy content in their own language and from local websites, especially if they need to buy. And even though English is the most commonly used language online, there are also a lot of internet users searching in other languages, such as Chinese, Spanish, Arabic. So there are massive markets out there besides English. This means that having your content in languages other than English will help potential new customers find you. It will help them understand your content and choose you. In any case, I figure that if you're watching this presentation today, you kind of already figured that out. So let me just give you a quick intro before I start. My name is Silvi Nunez. I am from Argentina, though I'm currently a digital nomad. Right now, I'm in the US, so it's very early on my side right now. It's 4 a.m. As Maria mentioned, I am co-founder of Optimational, which basically helps companies that are looking to expand with multilingual translation and SEO. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm always keen on connecting with other professionals and to help in any way I can. Okay, moving on. In today's presentation, as we mentioned, I'll be walking you through what I consider the 5 most important steps that should be followed when localizing a website. The steps are: first, researching the market and the language. Second, choosing a URL structure. Third, defining what content will be localized. Fourth, designing the localization process. In 5, and most important, optimizing localizations with SEO. Now, let's see each one of these steps more in depth. Okay, so the first step when you decide to localize your website is to do research. The more you know about where you're going and who you're selling to, the better you can plan. Just following that, I think that this new language is going to work feeling may lead to wasting your marketing budget. So it's important to question assumptions about a market and to invest more time in understanding the consumer. Now, there are many different resources you can use to obtain your data and insights for your research. For example, you can use search trend reports, to see what people are searching for, what the trends are. You can use your own website and social media analytics, to see from what countries are you already getting organic traffic from, in which languages. You can use marketing insight tools, to analyze the market more in depth. You can also use research from the language industry. It will allow you to gain to gain insights about market forces, about international business. And well, these are just a few. Depending on your business, you may find other resources useful too. But again, remember, research reduces risk. So ask yourself questions about the country or the market you're interested in targeting. For example, from what countries do you already have organic traffic? What business opportunities are there for you in those countries? Are there any barriers to international sales, such as legal limitations or shipping considerations? How can you overcome them? And also ask yourself questions about the languages you're thinking about localizing into. What languages are your users' browsers set to? Are people searching for your product or for your services in those languages? Can you offer support in those languages? And don't forget to ask yourself questions about the competitors. What markets are they targeting? In what languages? Is your pricing in line with what your competitors' pricings are? What are they doing? What are their strategies? You can collect all of this information in a table like the one on the slide, so it's easier to analyze it. Okay, now tip time. I strongly suggest that you document your global marketing strategy in a shareable format. This document will help you plan your work, define your goals, and set your priorities. On the resources section of our website, you'll find a global marketing strategy template that we often use with our clients. You can download it for free on the link on the bottom of this slide. And there are also tons of free templates available out there. So document your strategy. Okay. Second step when diving into new markets and localizing your website is to choose a URL structure. Now, there is a lot of debate about what the best URL structure is for international websites. And unfortunately, there's not really one answer. So it basically comes down to your resources, your time, and your money. So it's always best to research your options and decide which one's best for you. But let's quickly go over the main aspects. Okay, so there are different URL structures. We have the country code top-level domains, we have the subdomains, and we have subdirectories. Okay, let's start over here with the country code top-level domains. So country code top-level domains, they are tied to a specific country. So for example, website.es for Spain or .de for Germany. Now, these domains are great because they provide a clear indication to both to users and to search engines that your content is explicitly intended for a certain country. And as I mentioned, typically users prefer to buy from local sites. However, this is the most expensive and complex choice, and it requires handling multiple domains and building up authority from scratch. Okay, next we have the subdomains, which are basically subdomains of your existing domain. So, for example, es.website.com for Spain, or .de.website.com for Germany. Now, these domains are a great way to keep your website separate in sections, though you don't really benefit from the authority being passed as it's considered a separate website. And finally, we have the subdirectories, which would be basically like a subfolder of your existing domain. So, for example, website.com/es for Spain or /de for Germany. Now, subdirectories are a very easy and convenient way to manage a multilingual website, and they allow you to retain your website's authority, but they are not automatically associated with the target country, um, like country code top level domains. But again, it all comes down to your resources, your time, and your money. So research your options. Tip time. Make sure you tell Google about the localized versions of your page by implementing the hreflang tags. I am not going to go in depth about this, but I've included a link at the bottom of this slide to the Google Search Central that basically explains the importance of using these tags and how to do it. By the way, there's also a great instructional video there, which I highly recommend. So remember, implement these tags. Okay, third step. So after you've defined the language and the country you'll be targeting, it's time to decide what content you'll be localizing. Now, you may want to localize your website entirely, but you have to bear in mind two things. First, some of your content may not be relevant for the new target countries or audiences. And second, localization is expensive. So if you have a limited budget, you may want to consider focusing on a few pages first rather than on the entire website. You can do this so you can analyze and you can assess your content based on different criteria. For example, its current organic traffic, the importance of pages. So, for example, a services page is much more important than other pages, such as a blog page, and its usefulness and its value to the project and to the new target audience. So you can use this criteria when you're assessing your content. And tip time. I'm sorry. If you don't already have it, you may want to consider creating a content audit. I've included a screenshot of the one we use here on Optimational. A content audit is basically like an organized documentation of all of the content on your website. And in this document, you can keep track of useful information, such as the keywords that each page is targeting, the links, metrics. When it comes to localization, this document is very helpful to prioritize the content that you'll be localizing, as well as for many other things too. Okay, fourth step to design your localization process. Now, before we begin talking about the localization steps, I want to make a quick distinction here. Even though people guilty often use translation and localization interchangeably, they are not the same thing. In very few words, the main difference is that translation, um, it kind of literally replicates the original text and it focuses mainly on linguistic aspects. But on the other hand, localization takes liberties from the original text. It goes like a step further. It focuses on the linguistic aspects like translation and on other aspects such as cultural, graphic, physical, and technical aspects. So, in very few words, the goal of localization is to ensure that the new content and that your own products and services sound as if they had been specifically intended for a certain country. And because I understand that these two terms are very similar, let me give you a quick example. So we have a client of ours has an e-commerce that sells used cars. Okay, the company originated in the UK and they came to us when they decided to begin their expansion to Spain. Okay, so from the UK to Spain. Now, they needed to translate the car descriptions on their website, which were basically like long articles that talked about characteristics of different car models. And these descriptions were specifically created for the UK. Now, the challenge is that there are a few differences between cars in the UK and in Spain. And currencies are not the same, units of measurement either, and you kind of get the idea now. So let's say that rather than localizing these car descriptions for our clients, we only translated them literally. You use your imagination now. Can you imagine a Spanish speaker in Spain looking to buy a used car from a website in Great Britain pounds, which describes a car with a steering wheel on the right side? Maybe they'll want to check another website first. And of course, this is just an example of a high degree of localization, but I hope this makes the difference clear between translation and localization. Now, going back to the localization workflow, now I'm going to show you an example of two workflows that are typically used in website localization projects. The first workflow here on the top, it includes two linguists. The first one translates or localizes the content, and the second one proofreads it. And this workflow is typically finalized by a third QA step, which can be done on the actual website, to ensure that the translated page looks okay. Now, the second workflow involves one linguist only who translates or localizes the content. But this translation is not proofread by a second pair of eyes, which may have an impact on quality. Now, with this in mind, with these two workflows in mind, when you're translating your website, you can consider combining the two workflows. So, for example, you could go with a more complex workflow for the most important pages or the ones which are responsible for most organic search traffic. So the pages with the highest search volume. And you could go with a more simple workflow for the less important pages or the ones with the lowest search volume. Okay, now, to machine translate or not to machine translate, that is the question. And there is so much debate out there and different opinions whether machine translation is better than no translation at all. Now, the problem with machine translation is that even though the results are pretty good, especially in some languages, Spanish, German, oh my God, they're incredible. They almost always contain errors. And if someone's reading content and they start spotting these errors, they probably won't stick around. You also have to bear in mind that machine translated may be detected as spam, and it therefore may affect your site's performance. So, my recommendation is that you avoid it, or at least have the machine translation results reviewed by a native speaker. But if you absolutely have to use machine translation, maybe you can consider letting your audience know, that the content they'll be reading is machine translated. Let me show you an example. So the other day I was navigating in Airbnb and this pop-up came up. The pop-up reads, this symbol shows when content from host and guest has been automatically translated. Now here you can see the symbol in context. Basically, what this pop-up and what this symbol are doing is protecting Airbnb and the hosts from any issues in the machine translation output. Okay, so when translating your content, you will also have to put together a group of people, that will help you start, that will help you manage, and that will help you execute your localization projects. And even though the structure of the team will vary based on different factors, the people you will generally need in a localization project include the translation agency or the freelance translator, basically to produce the content in a new language. You'll have the marketing manager. I know there are a lot of marketing managers out there today to kind of oversee the whole strategy. You will have a project manager to oversee the execution of the strategy. And you will have a web developer who will be in charge of the translation integration, if you have one, and or of uploading the newly translated content to the website. And once you build your localization team, you should choose the right tools for your project. The tools that are most typically used in localization projects are the following. We have the translation or CAT tools, that's what they're called, which basically they help with the text quality and with consistency. They also allow translators to work a little bit faster, so they help speed turnaround times. And it also helps you keep costs down. Now, this is the most important tool in localizations. Two examples I've included are SmartCat and MemoQ. At Optimational, we use SmartCat as our main translation tool, and I can highly recommend this tool. It's a very user-friendly, so you don't have to be a translation expert to use it. And it also facilitates payments to vendors. By the way, we have a great webinar on how to use SmartCat on the resources section of our website too. Okay, next we have the QA tools. QA tools are basically used in conjunction with translation tools, and they help to further improve the translation results. Two examples I've included are Verifica and Xbench. You may also want to use SEO tools in your localization project, to conduct the keyword research or to conduct market research. I typically use Keyword Planner and Ubersuggest, but some tools may be better for some languages than others. And finally, depending on your website's content management system, you may be able to automatize the whole translation process by integrating the translation tool with your CMS via a plugin or via an API. And finally, the fifth step is optimizing localizations with SEO. Now, companies often spend a lot of time and money implementing an SEO strategy for their English website, but I often see that they don't spend as much time or effort on their localized websites. And this is one big mistake. As Neil Patel, the marketing guru, said, SEO is a marketing channel that actually enables small businesses to compete with the big boys. And it's no different when it comes to international SEO. International SEO is proven to work. It delivers results. And international SEO markets, and pay attention to this because this is important. International SEO markets are not so exploited. So expanding your SEO strategy to overseas markets can have a significant impact on your traffic and maybe even get you on the top spots of search engines. Now, I'll be sharing with you some international SEO best practices. The first one, the foundation of SEO is content marketing. So you need to make available content that speaks to users in their language and that is adapted to the country you're targeting. You can do this by means of translation, localization, transcreation, copywriting, your choice. But remember to speak to users in their language. Second international SEO best practice, conduct keyword research. Unfortunately, you can't simply translate keywords. It doesn't work like that. You want to find keywords that people are actually using in those target markets and in those languages. So you will need to conduct keyword research for each specific market. Third international SEO best practice, translate website attributes. For example, title tags, URLs, page titles, meta descriptions, and make sure that you optimize these attributes with your main keywords, just like you would do on your English strategy. Now, bear in mind that this part may be a little bit tricky. Some languages, such as Spanish, for example, they expand and they take up more characters than in English. So this part will oftentimes require creative writing. Fourth international SEO best practice, obtain local backlinks. You can obtain them from local business directories such as Yelp or Google My Business. You can obtain them from social media such as LinkedIn or Facebook. You can obtain them from industry-specific directories such as G2 or Capterra. And you can also obtain them from local news sites or forums, such as local newspapers or community forums. But remember, Google wants to see relevant, high quality local backlinks. So it's important that you build backlinks for those countries or languages you're targeting. Now, fifth and last international SEO best practice, update your internal and your external links. Make sure that the internal links that reference to other parts of your website, make sure that they are hyperlinked to the new translated pages. And also update your external links so that they redirect to other local websites in these languages, in these new targeted languages. Okay, now I am assuming that you're already tired of listening to me. So let me make just a super quick recap of what we went through today. So when you decide to start localizing your website, make sure that you follow these 5 steps. First, research the markets and the language. Don't skip the research. Second, choose a URL structure. Take the time to choose it. Third, define what content will be localized. Now, it's important to be strategic when defining this. Fourth, design the localization process. Remember, you can be flexible in this stage. And five, optimize the content with SEO. You can focus on the specific market you're targeting. And almost finished, I promise. Last tip, so tip time. After you've executed your strategy, remember to track and to evaluate your results and to adjust the strategy over time. You should see the localization strategy as an ongoing process that is continuously evolving over time. Doing this will help you reach your international business goals and use your investments wisely. And now we've reached the end of the presentation. If anyone has any questions, I will try to answer them in the Q&A session, or feel free to message me on LinkedIn or via email. I'm happy to help in any way I can. And now just a super quick test before we finish to see if you've been paying attention to me at all today. Let me see if I see any messages now. So my presentation today is localized specifically for one market. So my content is localized for one market. Can you tell which market? Let's see if I get any responses. So into what language is my presentation localized today? And maybe a hint, it's an English-speaking country, so maybe that'll make it easier. Okay, so my presentation today is localized into English UK. You can tell by the localization of certain words, such as um, localization with an S rather than a Z. It's not a typo. Or maybe the word optimization with a Z, with an S rather than a Z, which is also a UK version of this spelling. Okay, and now with this, I've really come to the end of my presentation.
Thank you so much, Sylvie. I think we just have a little bit of lag when we get the response from the audience when you ask your questions. But there are actually a lot of questions for you
Okay, nice. I
throughout
don't
your
see them.
yes. So first, we have someone, Mikal. I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, but he asked, "What do you think about the use of .eu as a country top level domain? Is it good for users as well as search engines?"
Well, regarding links, this will depend a lot on each page's circumstances. So maybe we can chat a little bit more in private and I can provide more insights. But if you're targeting EU countries, EU may be a great option. However, you have to consider that this may lead to issues if you're targeting, for example, US countries at a later point. But feel free to message me on LinkedIn and we can discuss your specific requirements.
Right. Thank you. Another question from Dagmar. Are translation tools that you mentioned used specifically for web translations? What about emails and other marketing tactics translations?
Yeah. Before I answer that, let me make a clear distinction that translation tools, they are basically tools that facilitate the translator's work and they make a lot of features available. Machine translation is one of these features that tools give you access to. But translation, so machine translation and translation tools, they are not the same thing. So I just wanted to make that distinction very clear. Now, translation tools can be used for any content. They can be used for external documents. You can upload them like Word, PowerPoint, PDF, HTML, whatever. And you can also integrate, for example, Gmail to this translation tool by an API or by a plugin. So basically, you can automatize pretty much any workflow. So translation tools, they allow you to handle pretty much any kind of content.
Right. Great. Another one. See, there's a lot of questions for you. What do you think about DeepL? Is it the best translation tool for free on the market?
I love Depot. I really do. I'm a Spanish translator, as I mentioned, and the results for me are better in Spanish than with any other tool. Better than with Google Translate, better with Microsoft, with Bing. It's definitely the best. I know this tool is also great for other languages such as German. I know it's been doing a lot of improvements on European languages such as Italian, French, etc. So I think it's a great tool. But for other languages such as Asian languages, the results are not as good. So it will depend a little bit on each language. But yes, it's a great tool.
Right. Okay. Is there a difference between B2C and B2B with regards to how many will ignore our product if it is not in local language?
Um, I would have to see each specific case in detail. I would say that maybe with when you're selling, for example, on an e-commerce, that basically your business depends on making many sales.
Hmm.
Maybe translation is more effective than when you're selling services, for example, to companies, because you're targeting less people. So maybe the results are better, but we would have to see each case in detail.
Yeah, that's a good approach. Can the machine translation followed by a clear disclaimer in the text be penalized on SERP by search engines?
Um, I don't know if I understand the question, followed by a clear disclaimer text.
Can the machine translation followed by a clear disclaimer? So I think this is with reference to the example that you gave with Airbnb.
Yeah. Um, so what you can do, for example, when you're implementing buttons or strategies like what Airbnb does, is rather than having the content automatically translated, maybe you can have like a button that people press on it and they manually translate the content rather than doing this automatically. Because yes, unfortunately, Google does penalize content that is machine translated.
Hmm. That's interesting.
So yeah, there are like different strategies to kind of work around machine translation. It's quite a complex topic.
Mhm, mhm. Last two questions. Does local address and telephone influence on search?
Um, sorry, I'm thinking. So showing that your website has a local address, for example, this may have an impact on users because, as I mentioned, users prefer to buy from local sites. They feel like it's more secure. So
Mhm.
this may have an impact on the user experience. But in terms of how well Google ranks your information, I don't think that addresses have any impact on that. But it's always important to have, if you have multiple locations, it's always to have these locations updated for each language or to include all of them on your content.
Mhm. Okay, that's really helpful. And last, what about translation of the URL links? Should they also be translated, localized from your perspective?
Yes, definitely. It's very important to translate URLs. So basically, you have to treat your strategy in new languages the same way you would treat it in English. In English, you want to have clear URLs. You want to include your keyword, your main page's keyword on the URL. You want to make short URLs, not including, certain words in the URL. And the same applies for translation. You need to translate your links and you need to include your keywords in the links. So yes, very important practice.
Okay, that's really helpful. I think our audience was really tuned in to your session. Everyone's really asking a lot of questions, and thank you so much for all of the insights that you shared with us. I think the 5 steps that you shared with us today. Very well summarized. We're going to follow that. I'm going to follow that. Thank you so much
Okay.
for that. And we'll see you again next time. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank
Have
you,
a great day.
everyone.
Bye.
This is all we got. Remember the revolution in our minds. This is all we got.
Lock me out of this life institution. I am angry and I on illusions. Yes, I hate, but it's not a solution. Try my best, but I'm just a human. Oh, we don't need to say we're sorry. We don't need to worship heaven's heart. We don't